I'm sure many of you, if you have followed the football world, know now that the New Orleans Saints are almost complete with their 2025 coaching staff. They have completed the top of the totem pole for sure. They're trying to get into the underground, the ruin type people that make up the entire coaching staff. But I'm not here to talk about the janitorial positions. I'm not here to talk about the athletic trainers, Nate. I'm here to talk about that head coach, Kellen Moore, in the Crescent City, coming down and hiring two coordinators, offensive and defensive. We got new faces in New Orleans, Nate, and I want to talk about them. The New Orleans Saints were the last team to officially decide who they were going to hire as head coach. When Mike McCarthy came off the board, they said, hey, we got to look. And usually the New Orleans Saints rush the head coaching process. They are usually one of the first teams to find a head coach. But this time it was different. And people are still trying to flag Mickey Loomis for, hey, there's got to be something he's doing wrong because he can never do something right? But I'm going to give him his props. I liked the length of the search. It was a search. It was not a pick right away. That's what I don't like. I want a thorough search. And you thought, let's bring in another young head coach, a young offensive-minded head coach, like we did back in 2006 in Sean Payton, and let's see where that takes us. So now, sure, it was a search because no one wanted the job. It's a difficult job, and I've explained that during our first segment about this when we talked about the first hire. I understand the severity of the position, and that it's going to be difficult to get New Orleans in tip-top shape like they were 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be a job. It's going to be a job that's going to require patience.
And when you bring a young head coach in, maybe they bring that patience. So Kellen Moore, he's in, 36 years old, youngest head coach in the NFL right now. And he brings in a couple of familiar faces. So, Nate, we've talked about how much we've liked the head coaching hire. We've discussed that before. But I want to get into the coordinators. And by familiar faces, he brought in a New Orleans Saints quarterback to be offensive coordinator. Doug Nussmeier, Nate, Philadelphia Eagles quarterbacks coach. He's offensive coordinator in New Orleans. So,
but let me ask you this, Connor: is he going to be the offensive coordinator calling the plays, or will it be Kellen calling the plays?
That's the difficult thing. I think it depends on who they have at quarterback. And I want to get into the quarterback situation in just a second. But first, I'm going to answer your question. But I want to see what you think about Doug Nuss. And I'm going to give my thoughts about Doug Nuss, what I like about it, what I think could be detrimental if certain things happen. And then I want to talk about the quarterback situation a little bit better. So, Nate, Doug Nuss is the offensive coordinator. Is there anything that strikes you?
Nothing really strikes me. I really feel that, and not to be rude, I really feel that this is one of those situations where he's going to have the title of offensive coordinator, but I think Kellen's going to be calling the plays. I'd rather whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Derek Carr or if they wind up drafting somebody, trading up to draft somebody, I really feel that Kellen's going to be the one calling the plays.
I agree. There is the likelihood of Kellen Moore calling the plays is very high. I don't see Nuss calling plays, but this is the situation I'm in. You're not taking a chance on you're taking a chance on an offensive coordinator because he has yet to be one in the league yet, but you're not really taking a chance on an offensive guy. This is a guy Kellen Moore has spent the last year with in Philadelphia.
Exactly.
He's not going to bring a guy to New Orleans to be his offensive coordinator if he did not think he was ready. And the good part about this hiring, they are now on the same page offensively. You're not bringing in a guy that will argue with you on how to run the offense because you ran the same offense last year in Philadelphia. You were together in the same offense last year in Philadelphia. There's not going to be any bicker about how this offense is going to run because they are already on the same mind level. They're already knowing exactly what they want to do going into this in terms of offense. Quarterback plays a different story. We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
And so now you don't have that discrepancy that goes around when you bring in an offensive-minded head coach that's not in the same offensive tree that you've been in prior.
Right.
That's what I like about this hiring. He has yet to be a coordinator in the league. But look at Dallas. They hired a guy, head coach, that was a coordinator for about half a year. So you got to give people chances. I'm not saying Dallas's head coach hiring was great. But Doug Nuss, you got to give him a chance.
I mean, I give you that aspect. You never know what a person can do unless you give them the opportunity and whatnot. Make sure it's the right opportunity and the right fit. So with that being said, everything you said was very, very, very factual. I mean, he had, just because he hasn't had the opportunity to be offensive coordinator does not necessarily mean he's going to be a horrible offensive coordinator or that he's not ready for the job. It's just that he's never had the opportunity, and this is a golden opportunity for him to write off those naysayers. And I really hope he does well. But the big thing for New Orleans, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is the quarterback play. Who's going to be your quarterback?
I'm glad you asked me that question. This is what's going to happen at quarterback. Okay. You now have a 10% at the highest increase in your salary cap going into the next season. You have to decide if you're going to rebuild this year or you're going to restructure and compete. You can keep Derek Carr and still rebuild. You don't have to get rid of Derek Carr in order to rebuild. That being said, you only have 2 spots to cut post June 1st. And there's a lot of big names and a lot of big contracts in New Orleans that are potentially going to be candidates for a post June 1st cut. You got Cameron Jordan. You got Taysom Hill. Those are 2 guys that are very likely not going to be in the Crescent City come June 1st. It's a very good likelihood. If I had to decide who I wanted to keep out of those 3, because you can only give 2 spots at June 1st, I want to keep Derek Carr. Okay? Simply because I like Rattler. And if you can get Derek Carr to be on the page of being an Andy Dalton-esque mentor to Spencer Rattler, I think that'll be the best situation in New Orleans. Derek Carr has the 4th highest cap hit of any player going into 2020.
What is his cap hit?
That's a problem. $40 million. That's a problem. I think it's actually $51 million, but the cap hit is $40 million. So,
damn,
it's insane. You have to get him with being okay with being a mentor. And if you want him to be your starter, that's fine. You don't draft a quarterback this draft. It's not deep enough. There's no way. Unless Kellen Moore sees a guy he really likes, you don't draft one. This is my issue with Nussmeier at offensive coordinator. I'll hurry up so we can get the defense. Who's playing down at the Bayou in Death Valley, Nate?
Who is playing at
Who's starting quarterback for LSU?
I can't remember his name, but he's really good. He's solid. He's solid.
He's Doug Nussmeier's son.
Yes, that's his son.
It's his son. We know New Orleans is very emotional when it comes to picking players, drafting players, trading for players, signing players. Super emotional. Now you got a kid who's the son of your offensive coordinator.
Exactly.
And you need a quarterback. This is what's going to happen. I tried to explain this to my buddy last night. You draft a quarterback for Nussmeier to develop. You don't draft a quarterback for Kellen Moore to develop. This is my opinion, and this is what I want in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Kellen Moore knows how to find the strengths of a quarterback, and perfectly display that on the football field. You don't get Kellen Moore to produce a quarterback. Look at Jalen Hurts last year. He had the best year running the ball last year, but the worst year passing in his career. Other than his rookie season. That's because Kellen Moore found the strengths of Jalen Hurts and used it in his advantage in his offense.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts' strengths, it ain't passing the ball, even though he's a good quarterback. He's very, very good on the ground. And Kellen Moore utilized that and took advantage of his strengths. You draft a quarterback that Kellen Moore can take advantage of the strengths of that quarterback.
Yeah.
Doug Nussmeier, you draft a quarterback for him to produce that said quarterback.
Yeah.
This is going to be a perfect a three-love triangle relationship with quarterback, offensive coordinator, and head coach. You don't get Kellen Moore to produce a quarterback. Please listen to me, Mickey. Do not draft a quarterback with the freaking the mind side of Kellen Moore producing them, because it's not going to happen. I do not want Kellen Moore producing the quarterback. And this comment right here, I never said Jalen Hurts was a bad quarterback. I never said he wasn't good at throwing the ball. I simply said Kellen Moore took his strengths and they won a Super Bowl. They took his strengths and they won a Super Bowl. And he was very good running the ball. He was very efficient. Throwing the ball, when he had to throw it, he did great. But his production on throwing the ball wasn't there like it was in years prior when they went to Super Bowl IV, because he didn't have to throw the ball as much. He didn't have that. He had a 2,500-yard rusher in Saquon Barkley when the Super Bowl was said and done. But if he could throw the ball when he was asked to, he did, and that's all that matters. So, I've talked about offense, what I like about Nuss, what I don't like about Nuss. If his son comes to New Orleans, I might dislike this team even more, because he might be the worst second half player I've ever seen in my life. He will throw for 4 touchdowns in the first half and then throw for 5 picks in the second half.
In the second half, he had a couple of games like that. He had a couple of games like that where he's very inconsistent.
I don't know his stats against Texas A&M, but if you go back to his Texas A&M game, he threw for like 3 touchdowns. They were up on A&M.
And then he throw like didn't he throw like 4 picks in the second half?
Yes, he did. And I'm telling you, he did that all year. He didn't just do that in the A&M game. He did that all year. But now you talk about how you scheme against a quarterback, and you have to do that defensively. And you brought in a guy, Brandon Staley, that does not have a very good track record when it comes to head coach. He's 24-24 in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
He's never won a postseason game. The only one he went to, they lost in overtime. They lost. He doesn't have a great track record. He lost 63-21 in his last game against the Raiders.
Yeah, got thrashed against the Raiders.
But let's not get this twisted. A good head coach.
Oh, hands down.
Does not necessarily have to be a great coordinator or vice versa. A great coordinator doesn't necessarily have to be a great head coach. Who's a DC in Kansas City, Nate?
Steve Spagnuolo. He's one of the best DCs, but he's not head coach.
Thank you.
Josh McDaniels, one of the best offensive minds in all of football, but not a head coach.
And Brandon Staley, Derek Carr are those guys. They are great coordinators. I don't know the people that were mad about this pick, but you have to think in the mind of a GM. Mickey Loomis might not do some things right, but he ain't dumb. He's got that job for a reason. He's not like completely dementiafied yet. He knows a couple things still. You have to think in the mind of Mickey Loomis. I have the youngest head coach in history in Saints history and in the NFL this next coming year coming to New Orleans. Okay? I have an offensive coordinator coming from Philadelphia that he brought with him because he knows that's how he wants his offense runs. He knows he can do it. But now I have a defensive coordinator who has head coaching experience, Might not have been the best head coach when he was in LA, but he has head coaching experience. He's over 500. We can say that. He don't have a losing record like some of these head coaches do. Dennis Allen, excuse me. I think I said Derek Carr earlier. Dennis Allen. But now you have the roles are reversed. Kellen Moore was OC in LA when Brandon Staley was head coach back in 2023, I think. 2020. But now you get into the situation. Brandon Staley has head coaching experience. You brought him here not only to run a defense. That's his priority. That's his main goal. But to help lead the team. He was just the assistant head coach in San Fran last year. They hired him for a reason. He's gonna be able to share some valuable advice that will help a 36-year-old head coach.
Yeah.
First time to ever do it.
Yeah.
Grow and learn. And that's what you need in New Orleans. I love these coaching hires because I think all these coordinators, all these coaches are now on the same page. And you just didn't have that in years past. That's why you had Pete Carmichael at OC for so long, even though he was bondongs, because he was on the same page with Peyton. And it didn't matter what Pete Carmichael was doing because Sean Payton did all the offensive work anyways. But now you have dudes, I told you, with the quarterback situation, it's going to be a perfect love triangle. And now we're going to have a perfect love triangle in head coach, offensive, and defensive coordinator.